going to regret you. This is.
I'm about to end this man's whole career.
Team, good job on defeating Thunderball.
Okay, so before I start talking about this game, I gotta ask the question, who the hell asked for an Ultimate Alliance 3? Out of all the game series to get a new entry this year, the Ultimate Alliance series? Really? I thought Rage 2 was arbitrary. I guess I can't be too surprised considering that Marvel's been raking in the big bucks from the MCU for the past decade now, but still feels kinda weird. I guess I can't be too weirded out since it gives me a good excuse to revisit an old classic I used to play as a kid. Yeah, that's right. I'm talking about the original Marvel Ultimate Alliance game. Developed by Raven Software and released back in 2006 on way too many platforms to list. Not much is known about Raven Software. They've created some good stuff such as Quake 4 and Singularity, but since 2010, Activision has delegated them to working on the Call of Duty games. They've also made the X-Men Legends games, which are predecessors to this one. Yeah, I'm going to be making some comparisons to those games later, so there will be minor spoilers. Anyway, enough about the semantics. This is Marvel's Ultimate Alliance.
This is a priority alert to all metahumans. UNN Alpha requests immediate assistance.
Thor, take care of those gunships. Spider-Man, draw them towards the stern.
Sure thing. I just love being a target.
Wolverine, you
Do it, Boy Scout. I don't take orders from you.
So what goes on in this game? Well, Doctor Doom has formed a team full of supervillains named the Masters of Evil, and he's pretty much causing problems for a bunch of different worlds, stealing different objects and just being a destructive dick overall. His motives are unclear for most of the game, but when the S.H.I.E.L.D. helicarrier is attacked by his troops, Nick Fury calls upon a bunch of different heroes in order to stop it. Spider-Man, Wolverine, Thor, and Captain America are the ones to respond, and after dealing with the attack, Nick Fury then starts a task force of heroes in order to confront Doom and the Masters of Evil. For the rest of the game, our heroes travel around the world fighting a bunch of supervillains trying to thwart Doom's plans. So visually, this game isn't very impressive, but I've seen worse. This game kinda came out in a weird spot with the 7th generation of consoles around the corner, and when that happens, developers usually make concessions to make the game run on both new and old hardware. With the case of Ultimate Alliance, it was making the game not so visually demanding that the original Xbox and PlayStation 2 couldn't handle it. As a result, we have a game that just looks kinda subpar. The game is mostly from a top-down view perspective and everything looks alright from up here, but when the cutscenes happen and you see how the characters look up close, oh my. At least it's better looking than the Legends games, especially Legends ones where the characters barely had faces. You're probably thinking, is this a PlayStation 1 game? Nah, this game came out only 2 years prior to Ultimate Alliance. You can see that the improvements are pretty noticeable. What's also noticeable is that unlike the Legends games, this one isn't cel shaded. Instead, Ultimate Alliance goes for a more realistic design for the characters. It looks better if you ask me. The only problem I have with some of the designs is that some of the heroes are so bulked up they look like action figures. Maybe that was by design? The cinematics are really good though, and the voice acting is also pretty top notch. Steve Bloom doesn't voice Wolverine often, and that's a damn shame because his voice perfectly matches the gruff attitude of the character.
You're a punk, Fury.
I don't know who voices this Spider-Man, but I like this snarky version of him.
Mysterio. Jeez, it's good to see you. Still got a fishbowl for a head, I see.
Spider-Man, do you always have to be a half-wit?
Ooh, now that hurt. And speaking of getting hurt, step away from those plans before I have to get medieval on you.
You idiot! Why do you think S.H.I.E.L.D. has plans for Ultron?
I thought everyone had them. I got some this morning in a box of cereal.
I also totally forgot that Thor is actually a serious character. I'm so used to Chris Hemsworth's goofier portrayal of the character. Actually, that's another thing. I'm so used to the movie versions of these characters, I totally forgot how these characters originally were. Like Black Widow actually being Russian and Nick Fury being a white guy, but I digress. So I played this game on the 360 and the game for the most part runs at 30 frames per second, but if an explosion happens or if there's a bunch of enemies on screen, man, does this game tank in frames. Nothing you can do about it either. It seems to be the case with the other versions as well. Speaking of the other versions, they more or less perform pretty similar to the 360 version. The Wii version of course has some motion controls, so do with that what you will. The PSP version has some simplified graphics, but it's a portable console, so of course that would be the case. The Game Boy Advance version? Fuck that shit. It's such a downgrade that it might as well be a different game.
You lose, friend.
So the gameplay of Ultimate Alliance is that of an action RPG, aka a beat 'em up with some RPG elements. But don't be comparing this game to the likes of Dark Souls or Kingdom Hearts, because as you can see, this game falls into the more dungeon crawler Diablo style of RPGs with a top-down view. But unlike Diablo, instead of being a one-man army, you have to manage a squad of 4 heroes. You assemble a team of whatever Marvel hero you want. Best part about this is that you have the pick of the litter with all the OGs from the Marvel Universe. The Avengers, the X-Men, the Fantastic Four, Deadpool, Daredevil, they even got Wesley Snipes' Blade.
Some motherfuckers are always trying to ice skate uphill.
Not all the characters are available from the start though. These blobs in the back here are characters that are only available through DLC. DLC which isn't available anymore. Doesn't matter though, there's still a lot of choice here. You could assemble your team however you want, but certain squads do get different bonuses. Like if you form the Avengers, your team does 5% more damage. Or if you form a team of heroes that can fly, there's a 15% increase in health. So yeah, different comps do yield different benefits, which is pretty dope. Alright, I got my team assembled, let's do this shit. So Ultimate Alliance doesn't do much to deviate from the beat 'em up formula. You're generally going room by room kicking the asses of whatever's in your way. Well, in the case of this game, it's more like jumping people since you're controlling a squad. Yeah, not really, you're controlling one person with the other characters being handled by the AI. You could switch between your 4 heroes at any time, which is pretty dope, and kinda necessary with certain enemies. Yeah, despite having 4 people, the computer tends to laser focus on whatever character the player controls, which is pretty annoying. This kind of bites the AI in the ass though, because you can keep switching between characters in order for them to not die. Beating down opponents generally feels pretty good. I especially love throwing enemies against walls and then beating them down. I also think that's what you're supposed to do, because when enemies do get knocked down, they take a crap ton of damage. Also like tossing guys off cliffs. It's both a funny and easy way to dispatch of them. You can also steal weapons from enemies, and let me tell you, that shit makes this game super easy. Not that this game is hard anyway, but the amount of damage that weapons do in this game is absurd. Look at this, Spider-Man with a giant flaming sword. Definitely my aesthetic. When it comes to the ass kicking, there's not much in terms of combo variety though. You have your standard string, a sweep move, and an uppercut move to get guys in the air. The last move is freaking pointless though, since you can't really do anything when enemies are in the air, and it seems they take forever to land. It's not until later when the game introduces enemies that are vulnerable to your standard string. That's when you're forced to use other moves, but still, it doesn't change the actual depths of these moves. This is where the RPG and superpowered stuff comes into play. So all 4 of your heroes have special moves that rely on this magic meter here. You know, the usual stuff that these characters do, like Spider-Man shooting webs, Thor and his thunder, Deadpool packing heat. Every character has a variety of skills to play with, and it definitely does alleviate some of the repetitiveness of the combat. What's pretty dope is that this game takes into account some of the power levels of each hero. It doesn't happen very often, but there were moments where a heavy object would be in the way, and you needed to switch to a hero that can lift that shit. There's also secret rooms and platforms that can only be accessed by a character that can either teleport or fly. Being an RPG, you can expect both a leveling up system and some loot to collect, but honestly, both of these feel like complete afterthoughts. I mean, you level up like it's nothing, and even if you do come across an enemy that outlevels you, nothing really changes. Same tactic of jumping them still applies. Heroes that are not in your party level up with the group, so you don't really need to worry about keeping everybody up to level like in other RPGs. Yeah, it's very newbie friendly, but considering how many characters are in this game and how often you'll be going through them, I don't really mind. But this kind of brings me to my main disappointment with this game. There's not really much in terms of managing your party. The only thing you can tell your AI controlled teammates is to be aggressive or defensive, and assist with whatever enemy you're fighting, which you're going to be doing a lot because your AI controlled teammates are as dumb as a box of rocks. Look at this, what the fuck are you guys staring at? The boss is over here. And then you also have shit like this.
My armor's failing.
12 seconds later.
Really, nigga?
Jeez, I guess that's what the whole co-op thing is for. I would imagine it's a more enjoyable experience, but I don't have people coming over my place like that, so I just gotta deal with it. I also can't help but feel like it was a missed opportunity to have combined attacks. You know how in the first Avengers movie, Iron Man shoots a beam off of Cap's shield? Yeah, there's nothing like that here. I mean, some of your abilities do more damage depending on who's in your team, but that's not what I mean. Anyway, your characters gain experience points every time you level up, and you can allocate these points to improve whatever skill you want. But for some reason, the game automatically allocates these points for you. I mean, you're not locked on whatever decision the game makes, but it's strange that this would even be a thing. I mean, I didn't think about these abilities that much, and I got through the game just fine, especially when I found out that every character can do the same thing, more or less. Every character has a projectile attack, a radial attack, a buff, a melee move, and some sort of stun. Not all at once though, of course, but if a hero dies in your party, it doesn't really mean a damn thing since you can easily replace whoever died. Except Wolverine though. He's the only one with a rage meter, and when that thing peaks, he's unstoppable. Check me out taking on this boss one-on-one with the rest of the squad dead.
Ain't got the energy for that. Give up, I let me smash you. Guess you didn't want a piece of me. Ain't got the energy for that. Ain't got the energy for that.
Speaking of bosses, there's a shitload of them. There's a big cast of heroes in this game, but there's also an equal amount of supervillains you gotta take down. Unfortunately, a lot of them are B to C tier villains though. Dragon Man, who the fuck? They most likely did this to make way for Doom, who's the main villain in this, but still. There's a Galactus, but god damn is he a joke in this game. He goes down by activating a machine that causes this weak looking explosion, and you do this through QuickTime events, which is equally lame. For those that don't know, Galactus is like the space Satan of the Marvel Universe. He's so freaking strong that he has to eat planets to stay alive. So taking him down in such a trivial way is, well, disappointing. But yeah, going back to the bosses in general, they're really nothing to write home about. They either fall in the category of being regular enemies with larger health bars or QuickTime event showcases. As for the puzzles, well, there's barely any. Yeah, this game is mostly go 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 from the very start. The few puzzles that are present are the basic push a block to a certain spot type of stuff that you've seen in like a million other games. You know, I'm actually fine with this. I don't need every game to have an abundance of puzzles, especially if they're subpar. Now you would think a game with non-stop action with a shallow combat system would get boring after a while, and you would be correct if said game overstayed its welcome. But luckily Ultimate Alliance ends before the slog kicks in. One of my biggest gripes about the Legends games is the amount of padding those games had. Seriously, some of the missions in those games were 2 hours long for no reason, and it didn't help that a large bulk of those levels were boring ass laboratories. Here, the missions don't go on as long, and they actually had the decency to send you to a bunch of different locations that look drastically different. Familiar places in the Marvel Universe like Atlantis, Asgard, Mandarin's Palace, Mephisto's realm. Seriously, fuck these demons that grab onto you.
Get this shit off me! Ah!
Speaking of Mephisto's realm, some real shit goes down from this point onward, so this is a pretty good point to come back to the story. So up until this point, Doom has been one step ahead of our heroes in every mission in the game. On Omega Base, our heroes successfully stopped the base from crashing into a dam, but it didn't matter since Doom successfully obtained the Super Soldier Serum. You know, that stuff that makes Captain America into a strong mofo. It's used later on by Doom to create an army of super soldiers, which he then uses to invade Asgard and imprison the Asgardian gods. Yeah, a bunch of gods lost to a bunch of super soldiers. But anyway, Doom takes Odin to a place called Ravenspire, where he manages to take Odin's godly powers. After a failed deception plan by Loki, Doom arrives and is about to annihilate our heroes, but Yatu the Watcher saves our heroes at the last second by teleporting them on the base of the Inhumans. Doom goes on to take over Earth, and Yatu informs our heroes that the only way he can be stopped is by acquiring a Macran crystal and a Meonic inducer. After 2 missions, our heroes manage to get these things, and then travel to Latveria to confront Doom in his castle. The team uses the items they acquired to nerf Doom back to how he was, and the final battle truly begins. A very disappointing final battle, if I might add. Seriously, Doom barely does anything in this fight, and his lightning attacks don't do anything but knock you down. And you're mostly fighting these waves of Fantastic Four clones that die in one hit. The worst part about this fight though, is when you hit Doom, he goes bouncing around the room like a pinball. I don't know if my game was just glitching, or if this is how it truly is. Either way, Doom is a letdown. Anyway, after the fight, Odin gets his revenge by banishing Doom to eternal suffering and reverses the damage he's done to Earth. With Earth saved, Nick Fury disbands the task force and everyone goes about their business. Also, Galactus wasn't happy with us stealing the Meonic inducer, so he vows to destroy Earth and shit. Okay, so for the people not familiar with Marvel comic book lore, everything I've said for the past couple of minutes probably sounded like... The story is not necessarily complicated, it just deals with so many characters and locales. I would imagine a lot of non-comic book fans not giving a shit halfway through. But then again, if you're not a fan of superheroes, then there's really no reason to play this game anyway. Personally, I think the story's fine for what it is. The whole thing plays out like a comic book, which I'm pretty sure that was the point. Didn't really feel any urgency to stop Doom and his people, but I did like talking to all the different heroes in the game and hearing their input on what's going on. Actually, through doing this, I discovered what I guess is a side quest with our heroes trying to discover if Black Widow is a traitor or not. It mostly just tied into what we already eventually found out about Doom, but it was pretty funny giving Weasel the wrong information consistently. Actually, speaking of the side quests, boy do they matter in this game. The outcomes of not doing them are catastrophic. Not anything that happens in game, but the events that happen after the game. For example, if you don't save the Omega Base computer, research to stop the legacy virus kills every mutant in existence. Yes, all the X-Men die if you don't save this computer. Or, how about not gathering the ingredients to save Namor? Well, one of his subordinates, Krang, will assume the throne, acquire nukes, and a massive civil war will break out between Atlanteans and humans. Oh, this has to be my favorite one. So if you don't save Princess Lilandra on Shi'ar, her and her people will ignore Earth's request to destroy an incoming asteroid. As a result, the entire fucking west coast of the United States is blown up. Holy shit. So I guess the lesson here is that the side quests matter. The only one that's terrible either way is the choice in Mephisto's realm to save either Nightcrawler or Jean Grey. If you save Nightcrawler, Jean Grey dies, but she later comes back as the Dark Phoenix, taking revenge against those that didn't save her. Even though she says this:
I'm sorry, but I can't leave here. And we have to face facts. You can't defeat Mephisto, but I can. By sacrificing what little energy I have left. Nothing can be done for me now, and I would rather die than spend an eternity here. Take care, my friends.
If you save Jean Grey, not only does Nightcrawler die, Mystique gets so mad about it that she kills Professor Xavier, and this causes the entire X-Men to disband. Well damn, now I don't feel that bad about letting Jean Grey die. I mean, the whole Dark Phoenix thing is essential to her character and bound to happen anyway. Also, in Nightcrawler's death, he looks to be alive and well. Anyway, once you complete the game, you can always go back and finish up what side stuff you didn't complete. I'm not a completionist by any means, so getting these artworks and comic side missions didn't mean a damn thing to me. I did a couple comic side missions and they're alright. They're just kind of hastily made side levels where you fight through a bunch of baddies from the campaign and then there's a mini boss you're familiar with. You also have the scenario side missions that you find throughout your adventure. Now these are scenarios usually tied to a specific character's backstory, and they're pretty freaking hard, mostly because you have one character, so instead of you doing the jumping, you're the one that's getting jumped. That's where the good old touch of death comes in handy. I'm about to turn Captain America into One Punch Man. Yep, there's cheats in this game, and they're glorious. Everything from an instant level 99 power up to running extremely fast. I would tell you guys how to activate them, but you know, we live in the internet age, so Google that shit. So yeah, that's Marvel Ultimate Alliance. Not necessarily a must play, but I would say it's a pretty good game overall, especially if you have a buddy to play through this with. There's always some sort of anxiety coming back to a game you used to play as a kid, because you're like, oh man, please still be good. Luckily, this is still pretty good. If you made it this far into the video and you haven't played this game, well, I would tell you to pick it up, but for whatever reason, it's been delisted on all the current platforms of gaming, including PC. So yeah, that sucks. Anyway, I'm done talking about this shit. Until next time.